The following program is seen statewide on California Public Television. He was America's only Nobel Prize-winning playwright and was considered the architect of modern American drama, breaking new ground in theater in this country by tackling controversial topics and challenging his audiences. In fact, Eugene O'Neill is considered by many to be America's best playwright. And on this adventure, we visit a place very dear to him, a home right here in California that today is one of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all.
Just getting to this park is kind of a surprise, because you're driving on a residential street through a residential neighborhood, not the usual route to a park. But believe me, this park is one of the finest, one of the most beautiful, and definitely one of the most interesting I have ever visited. Okay, our adventure begins. We have arrived. We are starting our Eugene O'Neill California Connection adventure. We've been met by National Park Ranger Joanne Jarvis, and Joanne, it's your duty and responsibility to officially let us know where we are.
Well, welcome to Eugene O'Neill National Historic Site here in Danville, California, 30 miles east of San Francisco.
What a beautiful location. Even though it's kind of overcast and cloudy this morning, what are we looking at off there in the distance?
Well, this national park is nestled between Mount Diablo State Park, and on the other side we have Las Trampas Regional Wilderness for East Bay Regional Parks.
So this is Mount Diablo over here.
Yes.
Now this park, it took us a while to get here this morning. It's kind of obscure, isn't it?
We are a little bit remote. We're a bit isolated, yes. It's the same reason that Eugene O'Neill came here. He liked the isolation.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, last night I kind of nosed around in Danville and asked some of the locals about this place. A lot of them hadn't heard of it, didn't even know it was here.
Yes, the access to the park is limited. You do have to call for reservations and come up in a shuttle that we provide because we are at the end of a private road.
Yeah, we had to come through a neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, neighborhoods have houses. And look over here. This is where we're going to be spending the morning, because this is the heart and the soul of the Eugene O'Neill experience here in Danville. Okay, as our tour begins, now we begin to answer some questions. It gets interesting, Joanne, because right here on the gate, going into the front of the house, what are we looking at here?
Well, the O'Neills did name their home Tao House, and it's a combination of O'Neill's interest in Eastern philosophy. He read everything, and Carlotta was very interested in Chinese art and Chinese furniture. So they named their home Tao House, and they put these four symbols on the gate, the symbols of Tao, Da, Pia, and Su.
Wait a minute, say that again.
Tao, Da, Pia, Su.
And what does this mean?
Well, literally, Tao translates to mean the way. Da to the big house or villa, Pia set apart, Su from the wilderness. So really what we have is Tao House.
The big house set apart from the wilderness. And here we go. Let's open up the door. There we go. Look at this. This beautiful, beautiful home sitting out here. Well, actually, it is kind of in the middle of the wilderness, isn't it? I mean, it still has a lot of land around it. How much land did they have to build this house on?
Well, they purchased 158 acres, and the park today is a little over 13.
Okay, so you have the core of their original, would you have called it a ranch?
They actually called it their rancho. They called it a rancho.
Did they build this themselves?
They did build this house, yes.
And what kind of architecture? It looks kind of like a Spanish, look over here, this is beautiful, kind of like a ranch house.
It's exactly what it is. It's a mix of a Spanish ranch house with some Chinese elements tossed into the mix.
This is absolutely beautiful. And whose idea, I've got so many questions about this, whose idea was it
to come to California, because Eugene O'Neill was an East Coast guy.
Yeah, exactly. But Carlotta was originally from this area, his third wife, Carlotta. So she was from this area, and she still had family that was in this area. And they were living in Georgia, and they decided to relocate. They didn't like the weather. It was too hot. It was a little too close to New York. People were dropping in on O'Neill unannounced, and he couldn't work. So they decided to relocate.
And they lived here from?
They bought the property in 1936. Built the house and moved in tail end of 1937, December the 30th, 1937, and they left in February of 1944.
So they were here about 6 years.
6 years.
Can we go in the house?
Absolutely.
Boy, this is so... Turn around here, Cameron, and look at this, where it's nestled up these hills, it's just surrounded. It is so beautiful here.
And we're very fortunate in this national park in that the view that you're looking at is pretty much the same view that the O'Neills had when they came here in 1936. Because, again, we do border up against Las Trampas Regional Wilderness Area, so that's East Bay Regional
so that's
Park.
all protected.
Yes, yes.
Wow, this is about as tranquil, even today, in the middle of their homes that have been built in this area. Back then, they probably had the place pretty much to themselves.
Yes, they were very isolated, and they came for the isolation, they came for the insulation, they came for the inspiration.
Boy, you really feel it. This is like a little creative cocoon right here.
Well, and also I'll point out to you that part of the Chinese elements of the house is that Carlotta was incorporating ideas of feng shui into the house. And this is back in 1936. Feng shui is a little under the radar for 1936. So for one thing, you'll notice all the curved and circular walkways as we go through the property.
Right here.
And that's a way of keeping evil from getting into the house, because only evil travels in a straight line. So you're going to see all these curved and circuitous walkways through the house. You have the dark colored tiled roof, which represents in Chinese symbolism the heavens, which is the yin, and it's all about opposites in feng shui and balance and harmony in nature. And the red doors and the red windows, which represent good luck, good fortune, and that's the yang. So you have all of these interesting elements going on in the house.
Boy, I'm glad we're with you. I wouldn't have noticed any of that. Let's go inside. Boy, look at this. Okay, our home tour begins, and it's going to be a lucky one because we're coming in through the red door, right?
Yes.
That means good luck. And I assume we start over here. What room was this?
This is the living room.
There's nothing here.
Well, the house is basically set in 1941, and that's because the only photographic evidence we have of what the house looked like are from some Life magazine photographs that were taken in 1941.
So Life magazine came out here to do what, a photo study on a life with the O'Neills at their home in California?
Yeah, they came to do a story on their life out here in their home in California, and it was actually meant to run in one of the December 1941 issues. But there was a slight world event that pushed that publication right to the side, and because of Pearl Harbor, the article never ran and the photographs were never seen.
Yeah, but you have these wonderful photographs now, and looking at the photograph of this room, it was very Asian.
Well, Carlotta did design this to be her pseudo-Asian house, her pseudo-Chinese house.
Now, they looked in the picture pretty comfortable sitting in this living room, so they must have spent a lot of time in here.
Yes, and you notice in the photograph that they're doing with their favorite pastime, which is reading. We do know that Eugene O'Neill was an avid reader, and throughout the house where we see these big niches and these big indentations, they were all meant to be bookcases.
So this was all a bookcase when they lived here?
Yes, and we see them throughout the house. We see one on the opposite wall as well. When they moved in, they had about 8,000 books in the house.
Oh my God.
And Carlotta very quickly said, no, 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 it feels like I'm in the public library. So out went the books, and in came artwork, Chinese screens, furniture, etc. We have the blue mirror here. There are 3 colored mirrors in the house.
Look at this. So this was specifically put in to be a blue mirror.
Yes. And you remember when the O'Neills were in residence here was the height of the Art Deco movement. So this may just be a piece of Art Deco as well.
From the living room to this looks like what would have been the breakfast room or the little dining room here.
Actually, this is the music room. This is called Rosie's room in here.
And who was Rosie?
Well, this is Rosie right here. This is not the original Rosie, but Rosie was a mighty Wurlitzer player of piano. And O'Neill was very enamored with the Rosies, with the player pianos, because he had spent a lot of time down in the bars, the brothels, the flop houses. And these were pretty much the TiVo and the Wii of its day. This was the big piece of machinery.
We forget that O'Neill was right with the people all the time, wasn't he?
Well, that's one of the things about his writing. That's one of the things that makes him so instrumental in American playwriting, is that he wasn't writing about the upper class and the nobility. He was writing about average people, sailors, prostitutes, people in bars. Certainly not anything that any other playwright was really doing at that time in this country. He was heavily influenced by the European modernists, Ibsen, Shaw, Chekhov, Strindberg, and he took those sensibilities and he made them uniquely American.
Well, you know your American literature, don't you? I guess that comes with the job description here.
It helps.
Okay, so we know he liked to read, and we know he liked Rosie, he liked the music. And he liked music in general, didn't he?
He was a huge music fan. So this is really a music room in here. And he...
What kind of music?
Everything. Everything from classical music to Fletcher Henderson, Bessie Smith, Paul Robeson. So whatever was current, he was a big fan. He had a huge, huge record collection.
How big?
Hundreds of records. Many of them are in the hands of the Eugene O'Neill Foundation, which is our partner up here. They have many of O'Neill's original records. The National Park Service has some. So it's just a huge, extensive collection.
So when they built this house, when they designed this house, they literally built this as a music room?
Yes, and actually this is one of the few rooms in the house that Eugene O'Neill himself designed. Carlotta designed the bulk of the house, but this room and his rooms upstairs were under O'Neill's design.
Do you think he envisioned a player piano like this in here?
Oh, absolutely. They brought their player piano from Georgia with them. They shipped it out here. So it was one of the few things that they actually brought from the home in Georgia.
Well, I was halfway out the door of the music room, and Joanne insisted that we stop and look over here at this wall of photographs, because this ties in directly with Eugene O'Neill's family and with some of the work he did at this home.
Absolutely. This wall is all James O'Neill, which is Eugene O'Neill's father. He was a very well-known actor in his day. He was a huge matinee idol, most well-known for playing in The Count of Monte Cristo.
When was this? I didn't even know about this.
Late 1800s. Basically, he was a matinee idol of his day. So he was extremely well-known in his time. Very, very popular and extremely successful. And the play that Eugene O'Neill wrote here that's considered one of his greatest masterpieces is Long Day's Journey into Night. And that play, being autobiographical, is about his family. And it's really exorcising the ghosts of his family. So the whole family story of Eugene O'Neill's father and his frustrations in his career, and his mother and her dependency on morphine, and the brother. Wow. The whole family dynamic that he explores in that play is all directly related to these people, and it's all while he's here that he's writing these plays, exorcising these ghosts.
You know, for people who really are Eugene O'Neill devotees, coming here and seeing this must just be overwhelming.
It is. If you know his plays, if you're familiar with the canon of the American theater, this is a very important place, because O'Neill wrote, I would say, 3 plays that would probably be considered part of the heart of the canon of the American theater that he wrote right here at Tao House: The Iceman Cometh, A Moon for the Misbegotten, Long Day's Journey into Night. He also completed Huey and A Touch of the Poet while he was here. So for only living here for 6 years, I'd say he was quite busy writing these plays that are considered so important to the theater.
Okay, as we head up the stairs to the 2nd floor, we are recreating history, literally, because there's this wonderful picture of Eugene O'Neill. Was that done for the Life magazine article as well?
Yes, it was.
Thank goodness they were here to photograph all of this.
Absolutely.
And all of these type of, what do you call these?
They are masks. They are masks. O'Neill was heavily influenced by the idea of masks. He really incorporated them into his plays, Strange Interlude, The Great God Brown. So he's very influenced by the idea of masks, because he really believed that everybody wears a mask and you change your mask given your circumstances.
Wow. Everything here was symbolic, wasn't it? I mean, nothing was here by chance.
No, it was chosen absolutely because it appealed to their sensibilities and their taste. Also remember that the symbol of the theater are the masks, comedy and tragedy, and that here we have Chinese theater masks, we have Japanese no theater masks, and we have African and Caribbean masks, because he really, really was influenced by masks.
Okay, we're on the second floor and we have hit the jackpot. I've been in this room for exactly 3 seconds and I'm already enamored with the feeling in this room, because this is where a lot of his work happened, right here. This was his study. This was his library.
Absolutely. This is where all of his work happened. This was his study, and this is the place where he came to write. There's 3 doors to come into the study, so he shut out the world so that he could go into his own creative world.
Right here at this desk.
Right here at this desk. This is his original desk, right
so
here.
You got the original desk.
Right. Most of their furniture went back to Gump's when they moved out. It had come from Gump's, and they
What do you
sold
mean
it
it went back to Gump's?
Well, they would buy it back from you when you moved out.
Gump's would buy your furniture back.
At that time they would, and so the majority of their furniture had been purchased from Gump's, so it went back to Gump's when they moved out. Except this piece here, the desk, was bought by an attorney in Oakland who was a big O'Neill fan. He had it in his law firm for many, many years. When he died, it went to his children, and then they felt it should be back in its rightful place, so they did donate it back to us. And this is also his original chair as well.
Oh,
so
really? I shouldn't have been touching that. Now, there's another desk right over here.
That's true. This is not an original piece, but Eugene O'Neill did have 2 desks in his study.
He used both desks.
He used both desks because he worked on at least 2 plays at one time, and I've actually read that he worked...
Wait a minute. So you mean he would have one play going over here and one play going over here?
Yes, and he may have worked on as many as 15 projects at one time. So he didn't suffer from creative writer's block. He was quite prolific that way.
But, you know, being up here and looking out at these views, because he had his desk set up so he could look right out, you can see where he would get inspiration from the natural surroundings, too, even though he was writing about things that were far from being peaceful and tranquil and connected with nature.
Exactly. But this is a place where he came, where he was able to pull all of that out of himself. And they were not easy plays for him to write. Long Day's Journey into Night was not an easy play for him to write. It was a very difficult play. He was beginning to suffer from tremors, and his mother had had them, his brother had had them, and really the only way he could write that play was to hold the pencil in one hand while he studied it with the other, because that was his creative process. Pencil to paper, not pen, not typewriter, not dictating, pencil to paper. And the only way he could write by that point in time was to hold the pencil in one hand while he studied his hand with the other.
Well, I got to tell you, this room, of all the rooms we visited, you really get the sense of the man and what he did in this room, his study.
Absolutely. His contributions to the American theater are absolutely undeniable, and many of them came from right here.
And right here on the desk, in the study, boy, you've done your research. You got everything down to a T. We have a package of old Lucky Strike cigarettes with the historic ashtray and the matches. Was he a smoker?
Yes, he was a very heavy smoker.
Is this what killed him?
It's not what killed him, but it's a contributing factor. He did have emphysema, tremors, emphysema, prostate problems, nervous stomach, depression. So he had a lot of health problems.
Was this due to his fast living that he had done all his life?
It did catch up with him. He also had tuberculosis as a young man, and that's what actually was the catalyst for him to become a writer, was recovering from tuberculosis. Wow. He became an artist or nothing. That's what he set his sights on. And Carlotta also had some health problems as well, so both of them were ill while they were here.
Well, you've also done some good research here. This is what, look down here. Now, any other place, you would just think this is a trash can full of crumpled up paper. But here in his study, this is meant to represent what?
A little ambiance about the creative process.
These are things he wrote and threw away and didn't work out.
It's what he would have done with the things that weren't working for him. Exactly.
Are any of these real?
I don't think so, but if you find one, let me know.
Wow, because they look kind of historic.
I think they're period.
Wow, this is great. So this represents the creative process
Absolutely.
right here.
Absolutely.
They've done it all. But there's another story going on here in this study, and that's the story I asked you as we were leaving. What are these ship models doing here on the wall above the fireplace in the study? And there's a whole nother story about this.
There's a whole other side to Eugene O'Neill, and some of the happiest times for O'Neill was when he ran off to sea on deep water sailing ships. In his early life, before he became a playwright, he ran off to sea, abandoned wives and children. This represents for O'Neill some of the happiest times while he was at sea. You'll notice.
I never knew he ran off to sea.
Yes, yeah, aboard deep water sailing ships, and then later, for a short time, he worked for American Lines. Was in this photograph you see him in his.
So he actually worked for the American Lines.
Yes.
Doing what?
Aboard the ship, being a steward aboard the ships. Yeah.
And what's this?
This is for someone who had 3 Pulitzer Prizes and the Nobel Prize for Literature when he came to live here. The only thing he chose to put up on his wall was this, which is a certificate of discharge from being an able-bodied seaman. So that was the thing he was most proud of, not the awards, but his time that he spent at sea.
So this whole thing right here is an homage to his love of the sea and probably of the life experiences he had at sea, which just added to this whole person that he ended up being.
Well, absolutely. And O'Neill, he wrote about what he knew. And it wasn't always savory, it didn't always end nicely, but he did write about what he knew. And some of his first successes were, of course, his realistic sea plays. Bound East for Cardiff, one of his first plays to be produced by Provincetown Players. And the sea finds its way into so many of the plays, including Long Day's Journey into Night. Wow. So it really stayed with him, and these whole ideas, the whole maritime idea. Indeed, the study in here is meant to look like a ship's cabin. So there's a whole maritime theme just in the room itself.
And once again, it all ties together. This home encapsulated his life.
Absolutely, absolutely. It very much reflects the man and his desires and the things that appeal to him, his passions. Absolutely.
Well, we're ending up by the old white barn, which of course was not, they didn't build the barn, did they?
No, the barn was already here.
So this barn's been here a long time.
Yep, it's from the late 1800s.
And it's still being put to good use.
Yes, we have in the spring and May we have the Playwrights Theater, and we have live performances in the barn, and in September we have the Eugene O'Neill Festival, and we also have live performances in the barn.
So some of his plays are actually performed here in this barn on their property.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow, it does all tie together. This has been an absolutely wonderful day. Let's end up here in front of the house, and let's get our facts straight. The O'Neills lived here only 6 years, from 1937 to 1944. Then they went to San Francisco for 2 years.
About, yeah.
And then they went back east, and Eugene O'Neill died in 1954.
53.
53, okay. See, this is, I'm struggling with the facts, because what's interesting, a lot of people don't know a lot about Eugene O'Neill's life, and this is such a perfect place to visit, to find out about it, because you really get a sense of who he was and what he wrote about and what his life was like. This is wonderful here.
Well, we hope that that you've enjoyed it, and we hope that people will come and visit and find out more about Eugene O'Neill and his significance to the American culture and the American theater.
Nobel Prize winner.
Absolutely.
And what's so interesting is that, and this is kind of disappointing, because usually when you think about national parks or national historic sites, you're talking tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who visit. How many visitors do you have here on a good year?
Probably somewhere around 4,000 visitors.
4,000 people.
Yes.
That's because you have to make reservations and get the little bus that comes up through this area. But I got to tell you, a lot more people than that should come here, because this is truly a national treasure.
Well, thank you, and I hope that your viewers will think so too.
I know they will. Thank you very, very much.
Welcome.
Let's get out of the way because here it is. The name of the house again?
Tao House.
And it's right here in Danville, California. Sitting here for everybody to visit and enjoy. It belongs to all of us. This wonderful place that reflects so much on the life and the times of Eugene O'Neill. This place is definitely one of California's golden parks. And when you come here, you can see and feel for yourself why he and his wife loved living here so much. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure in one of California's golden parks. You know, we have so many wonderful parks in our state, all of them well worth a visit. And if you'd like to go on this particular adventure again, share it with family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library. Well, it's available on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.